To animate a bouncing ball, in Maya we need two things. We need a ball and something for it to bounce on. I can make the ball by clicking on the polysphere, either by going to Create, Polygon Primitive, Sphere, or I can click on the shelf, Sphere. Remember, as we discussed last time, you want to go to Create, Polygon Primitives, and make sure Interactive Creation is on if you want to be able to drag out the size. So I can go in my top view. I tend to like drawing things like this in my top view. It gives me the correct orientation. And then I'm going to draw a floor. Now, 3D modeling and rendering specifically count the faces. It looks at the texture, it looks at the lighting, and it looks at how many faces your object has. So a lot of times if you're looking for something to run quickly or efficiently, you want to do the minimum amount of faces you need for an object to exist. So I could draw a cube as the floor by dragging out and then clicking. But if I look at this, it actually has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 at the bottom. It has 6 faces. So chances are I won't see the side and I won't see the bottom. So really I'm wasting 5 faces in this scene. It would be more efficient to use a plane. So if I draw my plane, now I have 1 face. And this is interesting, is that you have a normal, which is called the visible face, and 3D objects are different than real world objects because if I go to the bottom of this, it's black. And that's not because there's a shadow on it. It's because this doesn't physically exist. 3D shapes only have 1 visible side. And it's because if you think about it, if I were playing a video game or watching a movie and it needed to render both the inside and the outside of a mountain I would never see, that's wasting a lot of processing power. So oddly enough, if I were to go to this in Faces, select and delete the top half of this, what I would see is this object is actually black and then it's not showing up. And if I were to render it, and I could go to here and do a Maya software, you'll notice that I'm seeing this weird object because it's rendering the bottom of it and not the top. It's physically, you're not seeing this black area here, you're seeing the other side of it, which is why it looks like it's popping up even though it's actually going down. So you don't have to be as worried about it right now. We're not doing any scenes that are too complicated, but always keep that in the back of your mind. Now, we can go ahead and using that Alt and left click, rotate it so that we're just seeing the floor. And if I wanted, I could go ahead and put another plane there if I wanted to see less of it. But really, I can just have a top-down look so that we don't even see another wall behind this ball. We can just make it bounce on the ground. And from here, we might want to texture it. Now, if I have a ball, and I want to make this a little cartoony, a little ball bounce, I may want to look for shaders or for textures that are Toon-like. Always forget what window it's in. It's rendering. If I go to the drop-down rendering, I'll see one that says Toon. If you've played any cel-shaded games, like Legend of Zelda, Wind Waker, I know I played Jet Set Radio, that might be a little old for you. What you've seen is cel shading, where you can have something that's one solid color, regardless of the light hitting it. You can do a light angle shader, where if there's light shining on it, above 50%, it will appear the lighter shade. And if it's below 50%, it'll be the darker shade. I could do one that actually gives it a little more of a realistic shadow, or I could do something that does 3 tones. So I'm going to click the Shader Brightness 2-tone. And right here, you'll see I actually have some things I can change on this. If I go to my brightness shader, it'll show me that I have colors, and I can select which color I want. Now it's not giving me a color. Boop, there we go. If you accidentally click that will add more nodes, you can always select down here. That will exit out. So I'll click here, and then pick that color. There we go. Done. Over here, I'll click the sphere, I'll go ahead and pick a darker shade of the color, something that's a little more shadowed. And then I will hit done. If I wanted this so like 75% of the light hit it, and that part would be lit, and then only 25% was in shadow, I can click on this circle and drag it. And this will control how much of it is actually in shadow. I can do the same thing for the ground. So maybe here I would want to do a Toon shader, solid color, and just go ahead and pick a green. Maybe I want to pretend it's grass. And then hit done. From here, before we start animating, let's go ahead and do a file and a project window. This will set it so that we know where the document will save all of our files. So I'm going to go to New, and I would pick where I want it to save. So for me, that's actually going to be in my D drive. For you, that will probably be in your documents, especially if you're using the virtual machines. And instead of New Project, I'm going to call this Ball Bounce. Now, when I make this folder, it's going to make a lot of subfolders in it, which will tell it where to find materials, where to autosave if I turn that on, and where to render. So let me accept this. And just for your own sanity, honestly, let's go to Windows, Setting Preferences, and Preferences. If I go here in File and Projects, so if I click in File and Projects, there's an area that says Autosave. You can click Enable, and that will auto-save it. So if you're someone who forgets to save, if you're worried about your computer crashing, this is a great feature to enable. And then hit Save. And then just so you know what the file's called, let's go ahead and do a Save Scene As. And what you'll notice is that it will default to that Ball Bounce folder you made. And from here, let me go ahead and say Ball Bounce 1. And I can either keep saving over that one, or I can do an increment and save, which means that every time I get to a new step or new version of this project, I can save it. So if anything does corrupt, if I make a mistake, I can always go back to a previous save so that I don't have to restart the whole thing. For the projects we're doing right now, that's not as big of a deal, but it's something you may want to consider in the future. So let's go ahead and save. And continue. We'll resume how to animate this in the next video.